honestly, it's not as bad as you may think. Now, hold up. Let the intro finish before you start going crazy on me. All right, Batwoman Ep.1 pilot. Let me set the scene, like I always do with my reviews. If you remember, I did a reaction to the initial trailer, which everybody ratioed to crap. And I think because a lot of people expected me to just go in on it and grill it, people didn't really like my reaction because I didn't. I remained somewhat, at least, reserved my thoughts, a lot of it, until I saw the actual show. Now, I did a follow-up video saying, however, even with all that considered, it was foolish of them to release that trailer considering the times. I think if they drop that trailer maybe in another time period, it lands better. Doesn't mean that it lands well, but it lands better than what it did. But considering a lot of people on the edge, had the Captain Marvel thing going on as well, that was a terrible thing to put out. And the fact that they did it just really shows how oblivious some of the producers are in that regards, because there's no way that should have been allowed to come out. Considering that, again, the times, right? It doesn't cause for that. You know people are going to be on the edge. So why even risk it? They did it anyway. And it got ratioed. And you can say rightfully or wrongfully, doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. But as I do with anything else, I reserve my thoughts until I read it, until I see it. I will maybe speak on different comments that people that are part of the projects will say, but I won't flat out condemn it until I see it. I think that's irresponsible of me to have a following and to do that. Certainly considering that people expect me to have some sort of integrity, I like to think. Maybe not those who thought that I was just supposed to go in on it just because they themselves were, or they didn't like the trailer, right? I said what I had to say. And even with, you can see with Captain Marvel, never once did I said it was going to suck. And never once did I say it was going to be a flop or anything of that nature until I saw it. And then I had my thoughts. It was the same thing that I was going to do with Batwoman, and the same thing I did. Now, the reason why I say that it's not as bad as what a lot of individuals may have expected it to be, at least in my honest opinion, is because it's not filled with the hyper-feminism, at least in the first episode, that a lot of people anticipated. A lot of man-hating, a lot of, I'm trying to eclipse Batman. And that was not the case. Not in the first episode. That is not to say that it won't happen in the future. We'll address that when it comes. So that's what I'm meaning when I say that it's not as bad as what people thought. It doesn't mean that it was just this uber great sort of show or anything like that as far as a pilot episode. Also, and I think it's really important to mention, I already knew about this character. I've even said, and this is partially why my reaction wasn't as such, because I wasn't a guy just reacting just to be reacting, like some of the sexuality and all that. I long expected it because I long knew about this character. Now with Batwoman, I've said that she is one of the better tokenized characters, handled tokenized characters in the books, particularly in the recent post-Rebirth, rather, Detective Comics. They do not overemphasize the fact that she is, lesbian or what have you. They don't do that at all. She doesn't really try to eclipse Batman. They don't try to make it appear like she's better than Batman or anything like that. They don't run from the fact that she is, at the end of the day, a tokenized version of Batman. She has some personality differences. Even does something that changes the family dynamic of the Bat family at the time, which was just amazing with Clayface, Spoiler, and Red Robin, and it really was really good. Post Rebirth, Detective Comics is some of the best work out. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the actual show. For those that don't, spoiler alert, if you're planning to watch it, I mean, I like to give those rundowns because I know a lot of people that it's just people that don't plan to see it. So it's important if I'm going to analyze it for those guys. They need to know that I know what happened. So we start this with Alice, character by the name of Alice. Talk about her in a little bit. She is all right. So Batman's been gone for 3 years. We've established that. You have who is Batwoman's Kate Kane's father, having his little posse of people that are trying to defend the people that are left, undefended, if you will. They're unprotected. So they are sort of marking this new era, right? And Batwoman, or Kate Kane, she's not Batwoman yet. She's off training somewhere. Sophie, a girl by the name of Sophie, a character by the name of Sophie, is kidnapped by, and I mentioned Alice, is kidnapped by Alice's squad. Alice, wants to derail this whole idea. Says Batman was not y'all savior. This new crew isn't going to be you guys' savior either. So, in the conflict and them to derailing this public event, you have Sophie get kidnapped, and that's what. And then you have Kate Kane's stepsister calling her, saying, "Come back. Looks like Sophie's been kidnapped." So that's what gets her back to Gotham, right? She comes back, and to speed this thing up, she breaks it, and trying to figure out what happened to Sophie. She runs into who is Luke Fox. I'll speak on him here in a little bit as well. She gets this feed. She whoops his tail, gets the feed that has, camera footage of her being kidnapped. She's working with her father. They're trying to, they're tracking her down, tracking who is behind all of this. And we find out by the end of this that Alice is actually, well, hold on. Let me backpedal. I got to backpedal, actually. All the thoughts are running together, so I apologize. No script or anything. I'm all over the place right now. In this pilot episode, we get a bunch of flashbacks, and there's a bunch of flashbacks of them being back in, Sophie, being as a sort of love interest initially, when they were both in the military. Obviously, that got her kicked out, or not necessarily kicked out of the military. That they can't be having relationships like that. Sophie ends up lying to remain essentially in the military before, and what's the name? Kate, aka Batwoman, gets kicked out. So obviously there's conflict there. She thought they loved her. She felt betrayed. All this and so forth. But Kate doesn't like Batman because she thinks that Batman could have saved her family, more so her sister and her mother, in a car crash. Now, it was a chase that was going down. Bus ends up running into their car while they're driving. So you have in this car, you have Beth, who is Kate's sister, twin sister, Kate, obviously, as well as their mother. So the bus or the car ends up falling off a cliff and so forth. They're presumed dead. Obviously, she blames Batman because of it. Now, Batman, what we find out later is that he did try to save them. He just didn't calculate for it properly, and it ended up falling off of the cliff. And then when she realizes that, she's not as sour at Batman. And obviously, by the end, she ends up she's understanding that, okay, these people will be scared of Batman. They can strike fear, and Batman can strike fear in them. So she has Luke adjust the suit so it fits her. And then she goes out and kicks him behind. And basically, when the smoke clears, by the end of it, the very, very end of the show, we find out that Beth is actually the twin sister. This is why they couldn't find she puts the pieces together. She finds out that that's her twin sister. This is why that they could not find the body upon that crash. And Luke was like, hey, man, he had been trying to find her body. So obviously she lived and she's out. So she's going to be the villain and so forth. I missed a lot, but let me tell you, I had to break that down. This is a really in-depth sort of review, like all of my reviews are. I break down a lot of this stuff. So we had to go through what popped off. Let's start with my issues. Let's get that out the way. My issue is the age difference between Batman and Kate. For those that don't know, they are about the same age. They're supposed to be about the same age. But instead, in trying to create this sort of narrative dealing with, him trying to save them, he obviously has to be Batman already. And they were little kids when I guess her mother had passed away. And so I have an issue with that. Because it's one of those things that was a needless change. I would argue that there was a lot more that they could do with that if they were around the same age like they are in the comic books. And in the comics, I mean, you can see Kate's at the funeral of Bruce's parents and so forth. So there was a whole lot that they could have did, and it works really well in the comics. But for whatever reason, that was just such a needless spin. Luke Fox is a sucker. I really dislike that. Luke is Lucius Fox's son. He is a sucker, 100% sucker. He gets his tail whooped by her, and maybe that'll throw some of you guys off how she doesn't have superpowers, obviously, but she's kicking some dudes behind, just throwing them around and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, these guys either just straight up weaklings or, man, she's just really, 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 really powerful. Now you expect her to have some sort of training. She's been off training. She has a little bit of military training. But she's still doing a lot from a strength perspective that doesn't really make sense. But that's always the issue that you have when you're trying to portray female characters that don't have superpowers. And you sort of kind of got to get over. It doesn't matter what genre it is. Comic books aren't exclusive to this idea. This is sort of the issue that you deal with. So I didn't like that at all. So those two are my biggest gripes with it. Everything else, for the most, not everything else, a lot of the more important things. Sophie, for example, her being part of the reason why she leaves that's all canon. That all actually happened. Red Alice ended up being her sister. That all happened. It just happened so fast. The fact they went with that route for the first pilot episode is a little weird, but that all popped off. The father's organization, I can't remember it off the top of my head. That's all legit. But there is a little more beef between the two. Definitely, if you read the current run of, or the current run of Detective Comics post Rebirth, you can see a lot of what goes down with that. But what you maybe go into this expecting, you expect that this is going to be I should have saved this for a podcast episode. This is a really long video. But what you're maybe going into it expecting is that she is trying to crap on Batman, because if we're going to be completely honest, you can pick that up from the trailer. The opposite happens. So especially when she realizes that, okay, he was trying to save us. It just, things happen. And it never once in the pilot, she's like, screw this guy, I'm better than him. Even when they make the suit, it's not as obnoxious as it may sound, like, oh, it's got to be perfect for a woman. No, all she's saying is that, hey, it's a suit. It's too big for me. I need you to, set me up. It'll be great once it can fit my body. But yeah, it's not. It doesn't even feel like, and when you read it, or more so see it in the context of the actual show, it doesn't even feel like it's some hyperfeminism or anything like that. Like, it's better, because it fits a female. That's not the objective. The father isn't a complete word. Before, no, excuse me, not yet. I'm pretty sure they're going to go that route. He's going to become a villain at some point, but he makes it clear that he accepts her. He makes it clear that, you know, his sort of approach and her being sour at him, though understandable, he wanted to protect her because he's all he has left. You know, obviously considering that his first family, pretty much all of them were killed off. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting in that aspect because if you watch that trailer and you pick up on some bits, you think that, man, this is going to be the worst approach that he's gonna go around. She's gonna go around hating Batman or anything like that. No, like it really wasn't the case. You don't get that feel. She wears a suit. She's not even Batwoman yet. Like she's feeling some kind of way, seeing that, you know, the news coming out, Batman back, and I'm sure maybe going into the next couple of episodes, we start to hear her reflect on, okay, look, man, it's not Batman, it's a Batwoman. But right now she doesn't have a red wig yet or anything like that, which sticks out of you know, her suit. That she doesn't have any of that black and red thing going on. She just looks like Batman, but she's a female. And there's no little tidbits in the pilot, not yet, of her trying to, oh man, it's because I'm a woman, because I'm a strong female, I gotta put down the male characters because I'm just. It's literally none of that. So what I'm hoping happened was what I said. I've said in stream, I've said in videos that if they were smart, the producers would see that reaction and edit out the bits, maybe going into the actual episodes that make it that predictable, right? If they use the trailer as more so a test run, it will work out. Now, that doesn't mean that this show is for you. I want to be clear that doesn't mean that this show is for you. I think that it does have an element that will appeal to a lot of the more feminine audience, which actually is more surprising than anything when you consider that, you know, I thought that they would try to overdo it, but certainly when it comes to her sexuality, and the way she dresses and stuff like that, that's why I said that Ruby Rose wasn't the most terrible sort of character to person to depict this character. Because for those that don't know, when it comes to her, the Batwoman, that is Kate, like she's not like a lesbian that tries to adopt more like manly characteristics. That's not really how the character is in the comic books. She's lesbian, but she'll go through a bit. She'll dress. She'll put on a dress. She'll wear, you know, clothing that you think a woman would wear. Now, we don't know where this is going to go, but I'm interested to see where it goes in that element. And I will say that it is more geared, it seems, to a more feminine audience, though I think if they kept the route of the pilot, it may be a little more interesting to keep a lot of the male audience around. I watched it with the lady, of course, so I think that's more for who this show is going to be for. If you're going into it expecting it to be otherwise, I don't think any of you did, to be completely fair, but that's sort of the approach. So expectations, it's about met it. But I knew that, well, I don't want to say I knew. I was like, look, the pilot episode, if they're going to go that corny route, they got to do what Supergirl did, where Supergirl was okay for the first episodes, and then it took a turn that was like, what in the world? Like, you would at least think you have some sense to get some momentum before you start going with this hyper-feminism, uber mainstream leftism. Oh, by the way, Vesper Fairchild is her name, Rachel Maddow. Yeah, you hear her voice. This is what it seems like they meant, because she's like a radio host or something. I don't know what she was listening to. As soon as I heard, I was like, oh, that's Rachel Maddow. It's not, you don't actually see her. So she's playing her in voice. And this is why I guess been being reported that like Rachel Maddow is cast. Depending on where they go with it, I don't know. But I bit my tongue, by the way. But depending on where they go with it, we may not ever see her, and maybe for the best, because that's gonna be weird seeing that character if she's supposedly the love interest at any point in time of Bruce Wayne. So I'm curious more so on why in the world Batman just ups and leaves for 3 years without any sort of plan. Because it's Batman. Batman has a plan for everything. What go wrong goes wrong. He always has a plan. He wouldn't just abandon the city. And to me, that's weird. Now that's un-Batman like, so I'm interested to see how they piece this together. But for a first pilot episode, it's okay. It does just enough to be a pilot, and it doesn't go the route that I know a lot of people have been expecting it to go. It's not perfect. It's not just, oh well, now I really want to watch this show. That's not what this is. But we'll see where it goes. Why in the world is Batman? Why has he been gone for 3 years?